So plurality means collaborating across social differences. Like 10 years ago, when UberX came to Taiwan, we have taxi drivers and Uber drivers fighting each other. But the social media at the time are antisocial, so that it fueled only the polarization and did not actually produce any bridges between the different camps. So the book says that if you think the digital infrastructure should serve as a public square, we should not go to the nightclubs for very loud conversations, a lot of noise, a lot of amplification for this kind of civil discourse. So we can build our own pro-social social media that floats the consensus, or at least the bridges. And so we work with open source technologies such as Polis as part of the vTaiwan project that convince everyone who participated that it's okay to have surge pricing but not undercutting existing meters, that it's okay in rural areas for cooperative to form Uber-like associations, but the Uber driver need to have professional license. So very nuanced bridges were made, and the amplification of polarization is gone, because when people deliberate and hear all the different diverse ideas and build bridges, they become inoculated against the polarization. So we have been investing in such public technologies like airports and highways and bridges with public budget money, so that the infrastructure that defend against polarization can also be part of like the public square, but only in the digital realm. So that is the third way, not let one robot, AI, decide everything, not let everybody fragment, but rather go with our differences and see that as a fuel for co-creation. The foundations, the Stiftungs, the for-purpose, not for-profit sector is essential because they are the trusted, credibly neutral information processors. In Taiwan, to surface what is the trending rumor, trending information attack, and so on, it is not a state surveillance system. We do not have any administrative takedown or things like that, like NetzDG in Taiwan. We rely on co-facts, collaborative fact-checking, which is in the civil society, so that anyone can report a incoming scam, incoming phishing attack, incoming disinformation attack, whatever, to an open source dashboard. And because it's in the civil society, it is trusted by like Trend Micro, like Gogolook, which are the antivirus companies and so on, to share this common pool of knowledge of what polarization attacks are trending. And so the state provides support or endorsement, but do not interfere in how the civil society operates. Because the state, if we interfere, then it has a conflict of interest with the ruling party, and we do not like that, right? So the civil society must play a proactive role. If you see something that is wrong with the big tech or with the state, instead of protesting like against it, you can demonstrate. You can build a demo and show that it works better. In the Sunflower movement, we're not protesters, we're demonstrators. Protest is when you're against something. Demonstrate is to show something. I think for many governments, people understand that the essential services need to be provided by the government. I'm talking about tap water, utility, electricity, and things like that. Some private actors may operate that, but the interoperable rules are set by the government. What many governments is now waking up to is that, for example, with the EU Digital Market Act, not just Type-C, but instant message should be regulated in such a way that are interoperable. But we can go further. You can think if you post a podcast on Spotify, people can listen to it on Apple or on any open source implementations. It's called the Fediverse, Federated Universe. But in many other content that's not podcast or email, for example, short video, that's not the case. If you post on Instagram, you cannot view on TikTok, and vice versa. And so if you think these also as public spheres, then the same interoperability ideas should apply. And when people have the choice of where to receive the content, irregardless of the poster of the content, then people are going to choose the recommendation systems that are more in line with their values, with democracy, with bridge building, with pro-social social media, and not being captured by the advertisement's logic of sensationalism or polarization and so on. So the government's role here is also to define it as essential service and making sure that it interoperates in a way that we expect of our electricity lines or things like that. Yeah, I think increased diversity, of course, very important. We already talked about the public code investment. The public code is not just about open source, which is about the technical code, but also about the code of regulation, the code of conduct, the code of interoperability, the code of cybersecurity, and so on. So this idea of public money, public code is implemented in Taiwan. You can check it out at code.gov.tw. And we need more and more Stiftungen and charities and so on to complete this picture so that we can together fund for public interest technology that is not just an alternative to existing big tech, but also to convince the big tech that they have to shift toward this way. Otherwise, they will be socially sanctioned as antisocial. There are many examples. For example, we insist on open document format, the ODF. But when we started, we're not forcing everyone to use LibreOffice or OpenOffice or something, right? But we tell everyone, if you use Google Doc, then you have to use Open Document for import and export. And if you have other cloud services that doesn't do a good job in Open Document, I'm not naming names, then it cannot be procured, right? So the idea is to first insist on interoperability. It is not to drive away proprietary vendors. It is to ensure that they cannot lock in and exclude future vendors. And then Taiwan have Synology, have some local champions, and so on. And they grew under that to offer similar to Google Cloud, but more tailored to the local needs, and so on. And so the choice become much, much higher, and the degree of negotiation power from the public sector become much, much higher simply by insisting on this open interoperable format. So ODF tools, you can find it in code.gov.tw. There are many, many tools that caters to the Taiwanese need, like very large font base, PDF export that I personally contributed into the code base. And it means that anyone, even a minister, can actually contribute into the technical capability that fits the technology to the societal needs, not asking the society to wait for technology to change. Taiwan already have our own foundation model by the Science Commission called TaiDe, the Trustworthy AI Dialogue Engine. And the way we align it is by asking the people, how would you like AI to interact? And together, we created this constitutional document based on this wiki survey where anyone can write their opinions and upvote or downvote, but there's no reply button because that is an attention sink. So that we now know what Taiwanese people expect of the AI model. And then we use constitutional training, not asking people in Kenya, but using this specification to align the open model like Llama 3 and so on into the Taiwanese norm. And this whole process is called alignment assembly. You can Google or use DuckDuckGo or whatever other search engine and find the alignment assemblies online.